I'm 65 years old, I have 500K saved for retirement. How much can I spend per year? Now, I would imagine this is a question a lot of people, once they reach this age, regardless of whether you have 500K or not, probably are gonna face. This is important for people who are facing retirement now, people who will be facing retirement in the near future, and people who still have retirement far away, to give you an idea of kind of how much money you have saved and what kind of lifestyle that might give you in the future. So really, even if you're not at retirement age, people can still get a lot of value out of this video at all age groups, because eventually everyone's going to want to retire, even though most people will work until they die, like we talked about in a recent video. But if you want to have any shot at retiring at all, I would listen up. Now, first of all, $500,000 saved for retirement might not seem like a lot, because the average adult in the United States says they would need about $1.46 million, according to Northwestern Mutual's Planning in Progress study. So that's a far cry away from 1.46 million. It's only about a third of that. But the problem is, most people are just completely out of touch with reality of how much money people really do have when it comes to retirement, which is why most people will work until they die. Because the real numbers, according to baby boomers, say that they only have about $120,000 saved for retirement. And baby boomers are either at retirement age or approaching it rapidly. So $120,000 is nothing, even compared to the $500,000. And the average American across all age groups only has about $88,000 saved for retirement. So people are far, far away from that 1.46 million that they think they will need to retire comfortably. Even take a look at this, guys. Data from the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances say that the average retirement account for Americans between ages 65 and 74 is $200,000. So I would say this person at 65 with 500K saved for retirement is doing pretty damn good compared to the average American. Now, the oldest advice when it comes to withdrawing income in retirement is to stick with the 4% rule, which is supposed to be that you stretch out your savings over 30 years and you withdraw 4% of it every single year. Another thing to keep in mind when you're following the 4% rule is that you're supposed to adjust the 4% withdrawal for inflation every single year. So that number is actually going to go up due to inflation. And let's face it, if you have years like we're having right now with inflation, then that adjustment's going to be pretty hefty. Another method that's become popular in retirement is using a method that Vanguard developed. And this could be helpful for people who might have 30 years or more to live in retirement. And basically what you do is you spend more money when the market is good and less money when the market is not so good. So you can kind of adjust your spending based on how well the stock market is performing. And so the problem is $20,000 per year on average withdrawal over the next 30 years doesn't really seem like a whole lot of money. That's not a lot of money to live off of. But then of course, you will still have Social Security for as long as that's going to last anyways. The average Social Security benefit as of 2023 for a 66-year-old retiree is about $2,500 a month. So that's another $30,000 a year. So if you're getting $30,000 from Social Security, $20,000 from your retirement withdrawals, now you're living off of $50,000 a year. But the real question is, $50,000 a year even enough? Well, I know for a good chunk of retirees out there, it definitely is, because the last time I talked about this subject, I talked about people who were retiring with nothing saved for retirement and are only going to have Social Security to live off of and maybe selling their house for some proceeds, and that's about it. And a lot of people wrote me saying, hey, I can do that. You know, I don't have any problem living off of $20,000 a year. So if that's you, then great. Having $50,000 a year is going to be more than enough. But in retirement, you want to be able to spend roughly 80% of your annual income that you're earning right now while you're working. So if you earn $100,000 a year, you want to be able to spend at least $80,000 a year in order to live a comfortable retirement. And obviously $50,000 a year is pretty far away from $80,000 a year. You're essentially going to have to cut your monthly budget in half if you want to live off of half in that case. So the uncomfortable reality that a lot of people are going to have to face in retirement is, even if you've done well and saved more than the average American has for retirement, and you want to retire at 65, you're still going to be looking at probably a pretty substantial pay cut versus what you were making when you were working. Unless, of course, you made about $50,000 a year when you were working and your income remains about the same, then that's fantastic. But for a lot of people who are earning more, they're going to have to find ways to cut back. Whether it's changing the type of groceries you buy, whether it's changing the location you live in, whether it's downsizing your home. There's a lot of things that you can do and might need to do in order to make that budget work more comfortably for you. Now, of course, we're only talking about the $500,000 that this person has saved for retirement and their possible Social Security income, but we didn't address something that we addressed in the previous retirement video, which is, well, if you have a house, maybe then you can do something like a reverse mortgage, or you can sell the house, which would be my preferred way to do it, because you can run into a lot of problems with borrowing against your home or doing a reverse mortgage. And a lot of times this doesn't work out in your favor. There's a lot of predatory practices behind different types of home equity loans and reverse mortgages that can end up looking like a good thing in the moment, but actually end up backfiring at some point down the road. Whereas if you sell your house, you take all that money, all that equity off the table right off the bat, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. You've got that extra nest egg that you can live off of in retirement. But of course, none of this is financial advice. It's just sort of my opinion on what I would do if I were in this situation. So let's say you're able to put another $500,000 towards retirement by selling your house. That's how much equity you have tied up. Well, now you just bought yourself a much more comfortable retirement, assuming you can find a nice, affordable place to live. So by most measures, this situation of being 65 and having $500,000 saved for retirement could end up being the ideal scenario for a lot of people that might even want to have a shot at retiring one day. But if you are on the younger side, I would be looking at this. Say you're in your 30s or 40s and maybe you only have, less than 100 grand saved for retirement, something like that, kind of like the average person right now. Well, I would be looking at this scenario and thinking, am I going to feel comfortable having that $500,000 in retirement and nothing else to fall back on, maybe not even Social Security, because that's been threatened to be taken away from us for years now due to how insolvent it is. And I think the likelihood of Social Security being around by the time someone like me is retirement age, another 30 years from now, is probably slim to none. So factoring that into your long-term retirement plan might not be such a good idea. And I know it's criminal because we've all been paying into Social Security ever since we first started working. I got my first job at 16 years old. That's when they first started swiping that money right out of my paycheck for Social Security that I may never end up getting one day. But instead of sit here and cry and whine about it, I would rather just be more prepared and know that, hey, you're probably going to need more money in retirement than you think, because you're just not going to have that extra income that people retiring today have. In fact, there's some major regrets among retirees, and that's kind of one of them. Transamerica Center for Retirement, they did a study over 2,400 retirees, and 76% of them wish they would have saved more consistently for retirement. So that's almost all of them, guys. 76%. They wish they would have been more knowledgeable about retirement saving and investing. And of course, these are all big retirement regrets, right? These are people who are already reached retirement age, wishing they would have done things differently. 50% said they would have liked to have more information and advice from their employer on how to reach their retirement goals. Well, I wouldn't be holding your breath for that one. I know some places do offer that, but let's face it, is your employer going to care about how well you're going to do in retirement as much as you? Probably not. So it's up to you to take charge of that situation, not your employer. 49% of retirees said that debt interfered with their ability to save for retirement. Now, this is something I preach all the time here on the channel, is to make sure you get out of debt and stay out of debt. Do not be taking on debt that you can't pay back. Don't be taking on debt that won't pay for itself in some way or another, like basically an investment property. Because if you have to take debt out to buy anything besides a house, you can't afford it. That's the reality. And clearly, half of these people who are retired today wish they never had that debt, because now it's making it difficult for them to be retired. This is the one I felt guilty with last time I talked to you guys about this, which is 49% of retirees said that they waited too long to concern themselves with saving and investing for retirement, because like I said before, it just seems like something so far away, especially when you're in your 20s. And I actually kind of made peace with the fact a long time ago when I was working in my 20s and didn't feel like I was going to have any significant future for myself. I already kind of accepted the idea back then that I'll probably be one of those people that works until I die. It just is what it is, especially since already in my early 20s, when they started talking about people my age probably would never see a Social Security check in our life. But I will say the one good thing about being faced with that level of negativity as a young 20-something is understanding from a young age that it's going to be up to you if you want to be able to have retirement. You're not going to get a big inheritance from anybody, because I don't have rich family. You're not going to win the lottery, because that's unrealistic. And you're also not going to have anything saved for retirement unless you do something about it, unless you make that a reality, because no one is going to save that money for you, and you're probably going to need more than you think. Now, apparently retired women have even bigger regrets than retired men, mainly because they feel guilty that they're not more knowledgeable about their retirement situation, knowing how much they should have saved and invested to get to a comfortable place in retirement. Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
For like the YouTube thing?
Yeah, man.
Are you?
Yep. YouTube. Talk about retirement stuff, actually. Really? Yeah.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah, man.
We'll be there someday.
Exactly. Everybody needs to know about this, even if you're young.
Oh yeah.
It's important. Enjoy the volleyball. You see, these young kids even understand back there playing volleyball that retirement's going to be important, like I just talked about. You know, they say, oh, we'll be there someday. That's right. Everybody's going to be there someday. Even if you're only 18 playing volleyball on the beach, it's important to recognize that one day you're going to have to deal with that. Here's the other key piece of wisdom from all of this, is by knowing about what current retirees regret the most, especially if you're on the younger side, you have something huge in your back pocket that these retirees don't have. And you know what that is? It's time. It's time to make it right. It's time to catch up. It's time to be able to rethink your strategy and look at your finances and how you're spending your money now, and see if that's going to put you on the correct trajectory to be able to have any shot at retirement, or a comfortable retirement at that. Because retirement used to be relatively easy, guys. When you look at the past, back before the 401k was invented, most people worked the same job, they got a pension after they retired after 30 or 40 years working there, and that pension paid them for life, in addition to getting a Social Security check. And that pension was often just as much as they made at their job, if not more. But now those days are gone. There's hardly any jobs left that will pay you a pension. And Social Security is in danger of going away in the next couple of decades if something drastic isn't done to fix or address the issue. So what do you have left? All you have left is your own ability to save and invest for your future. That's it. There is nothing else to fall back on. It'd be great if there is something else to fall back on, but I wouldn't count on it. Now, part of the reason the current retirees don't have enough money saved for retirement is because they didn't start saving soon enough. In fact, the person retiring today only started saving for retirement around the age of 35, which is pretty close to my age. That makes a lot of sense, because it's probably the age where you're finally making enough money where you feel like you can breathe and you're not just trying to live paycheck to paycheck and pay the bills. And then you start thinking, well, maybe I'm going to need a little bit extra for my future. You start thinking about that and you start saving a little bit extra for it. But prior to then, and up until this point, you know, finances were so difficult, it was so hard to make it, that you really didn't have a chance to think about it because every single dollar you were making was going towards living expenses. And the reality is too, if you're a younger person watching this video today, you don't even have an excuse not to save for retirement, especially because the information out there is so widely available on how to do it. You know, it's much easier to kind of be in the know on how to save for retirement than it was 40 years ago, before people had the internet and before the 401k became super popular and a way for people to save. And the thing is too, guys, even a small amount of debt can really screw up your retirement savings, because it puts you in this mindset where you feel like you have to choose, do I save for retirement or do I pay down the credit card bill? You might only have $6,000 in credit card debt and no other debt, but that's the amount of debt you have that you're paying off little by little because you can't afford to pay it all off. Well, in that case, every single month that you have to make that credit card bill payment, that's probably a month that you're choosing not to save for retirement. So you're just kind of pushing that goal further and further away to a point where it may never happen. Now, there are more and more employers that are starting to offer retirement education programs where basically they teach you how to save for retirement. And this is something that's offered for free through your workplace. As of 2024, about 53% of employers said they offered financial education and planning, but only 27% of the employees that worked at these places even knew about it. Like I said earlier, some workplaces do have some information out there available for people, but it's going to be up to you if you really want to gain access to it. So even just watching a video like this and knowing that, hey, maybe where you work offers this advice and information for you for free is something that you didn't know before that will help you start saving for retirement as a younger person. But you know, the crazy paradox with this free advice from your workplace is the people who tend to need this advice the most don't end up looking at it or taking it because they're ignorant about the issue. And the people who are the most well prepared and are planning diligently for retirement are the ones who end up taking these programs even though they probably don't even need it and they're already doing well on their own. So it's one of those things that you need to be in the driver's seat for with your own life. No one's going to save for retirement for you. No one's going to care about it as much as you should. And you know, kind of related to all of this, especially since it's the holiday season, is it turns out that the busiest time of year for people to get divorced, especially older adults, is in January, after the new year. They kind of like go through the holiday season. People don't want to rock the boat and split up, especially when you have family events and things like that going on. They kind of float through that for one extra month, and then January comes and says, you know what, I want a divorce. And obviously that can affect retirement too. It's even to the point now where January is called the divorce month. So I guess divorce lawyers are already salivating and enjoying their holiday break, knowing that business is about to tick up tremendously in the next couple of weeks. In fact, one of the largest and fastest growing groups of people who are getting divorced are people who are 50 years old or older, and this is also known as gray divorce. In fact, Americans who are age 55 or older, the divorce rate has doubled for people in this age group since the year 1990. And it's actually even worse for people 65 and older. The divorce rate has tripled for those people in the same time period. And a lot of women are the ones who are initiating these divorces. So this is something both sexes need to be aware of. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, and we're not going to get into marital and relationship issues, but you know, a lot of times people are unhappy for a long time, or women stay married for the kids, or whatever the reason is. There's always reasons that people stay together longer than they should have, and then finally it comes to a breaking point and they say, I want a divorce. But obviously, if you're a woman getting divorced at this age, you're probably not going to fare so well in retirement because the stats are not on your side. They say a woman's household income can drop as much as 40% getting divorced at this age, while a man's income might even go up. I don't know how that's possible, especially if the man ends up having to pay alimony. But one of the reasons women suffer more getting divorced in this age group, especially if you were a stay-at-home mom and didn't work, is because you don't have all those Social Security contributions over the years, and you don't have any of the savings that you should have been saving for retirement, like we just talked about, because you were too dependent on your husband. And now that you're splitting up, you don't have those benefits that you otherwise would. So the other thing a lot of women in this position might want to do is look at if they can even afford to get divorced. And I'm definitely not saying that you should stay in a bad marriage because you don't have the money to leave, but it is something that you're gonna have to face, and a reality that, you know, life might not be so comfortable afterwards if you choose to go the divorce route, if you don't have a lot of financial options to fall back on. But this is another good example and a good reminder that even if you do everything right in life, even if you make all of the appropriate plans for retirement, there's some curveballs that can come up and throw things off in retirement or getting close to retirement, like a divorce. I know that's something that happened to my mom. You know, now that she's retired, her retirement is more difficult today than it would have been if she never would have got divorced. She's lucky that she was even able to retire at all. So you do have to account for things like that as well, that might not be something comfortable to think about. Sad to say, the only person you can really rely on in retirement or throughout your entire life is you. And I know that's a lonely thought, guys, because that's something I've thought about many times throughout the years, and it sucks. It really does suck. But it's the cold, hard truth that all of us have to face today into 2025. And so the whole point of this video is a reality check for people who still desire to retire one day. And you have to know that the only way that you're gonna get there is if you make it happen. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't wanna wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.